Here we go! That just gets you pumped up, doesn't it, folks? Welcome into the first edition of Batter Up here on the IM6 Network for the 2023 MLB season. The MLB season is underway, and so is Batter Up's Season 2. My name is Isaiah Leong here from the IM6 Network, and tonight I'll be joined by a lot of great guests here on the program here tonight to talk about the opening week of the 2023 MLB season. But before I get into that, I just want to, tell all of you guys to make sure you guys like and follow our network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., etc., etc. And also, please share and like this video, share it everywhere. We want to get as much views as possible to this video. So without further ado, let me bring on the two guests that we have on this program. Unfortunately, Loro can't make it to the program tonight, so we all have to hold down the fort without him. But without further ado, let's bring up our first guest, Mr. James Gonzalez.
Hey, what's going on? What was the song playing? There was no music going.
Really? I think it might be some technical difficulties, but it was Timmy Trumpet by Narco, Edwin Diaz's Waka music. We're playing it because actually with him being hurt, we're trying to honor him. So that's why we're playing the song. But James, it's good to see you, man. Your first time on Batter Up. James has been on many programs here on MI6, and I think he was on one program on IM6. But he's back, man. He is back. It's good to have you back, my man. You can catch James on the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, as well as Halos in the Infield. And also you can catch him crying tomorrow when the Clippers lose to the Lakers and get bounced out of the playoffs. But James, how are you, man? How are you?
Well, I'm good. I saw the Angels get spanked 11-2 up in Seattle, and that was not fun. The rubber game is coming tomorrow with the day game with Ohtani on the mound for the Angels. So at least I have that looking forward to listening to that at work tomorrow. So it's good to be back here on MI6. I know a lot has changed with me, but it's good to see everybody here again.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to see you for sure. And to the bottom, we have my guy Ben Curse, who is I think rocking a Bruins cap. His Bruins are one of the best teams in the NHL. But Ben, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. James is welcome. It's great to see you back on. It's been a while. I know we talked off the air, but it's great to have you back on. Before we get into the baseball, I obviously have to be. I'm excited because how about them Yukon Huskies? My
Yep.
basketball team. I'm as a Connecticut person. Man, I was completely in knots last night watching that game. If you wanted to try to talk to me or call me in that second half, I probably wouldn't have talked to you. When I cut down to 5 at San Diego State, I probably wouldn't have been able to hear from Callan if Callan's San Diego State team was able to come and win the championship. But they had a great run. Gotti got my champions gear and stuff like that. So 5 titles now. It's absolutely crazy for this UConn team. I'm very excited for them, and man, I just couldn't be more honored and excited for another championship. So just want to get that off with my chest because it's been a great run. It's been a great ride. And one thing about the Bruins, I don't want to say it, but UConn won in 2011. They won a championship in the Bruins. The last time they won the Stanley Cup was 2011. So we'll see if magic happens that way. But we're here to talk baseball, and I have a lot to say about my Sox. So.
Yeah, congratulations to you, Ben, on
Thank
UConn winning another national title. What an absolutely improbable run that your Huskies went on in the tournament and ended up winning the championship. But without further ado, I'm going to pass the floor to James to host this program for tonight. So, James, the floor is yours, my man.
Well, I always remember this watching this show, and we always talk about our favorite teams. Really quick, the Angels lost tonight. As I mentioned before, giving it back to Isaiah, they lost 11-2 to Seattle today. So the rubber game will be tomorrow with Otani on the mound, and I can't wait to see that or listen to that at least at work. And Angels right now 3-2. They did win 3 in a row after losing the first one to Oakland. Right now there's a lot of positives, but there's some negatives. Our rotation is suspect, and you knew that coming in. There's 4 lefties. Um, Tyler Anderson did look good, and that was good to see. Otani looked good. Sandoval looked good. But it's the back of the rotation that could be a problem. And the run support, as you saw in the first game, Isaiah with Oakland, was not there. But the next 2 games were. And then the first game with Seattle, it was there. But tonight, everything went wrong with the Angels tonight. Jose Suarez, not a good starter for the Angels, and it's unfortunate to see. So I hope that gets better. Hope maybe he's not going to be with the team anymore. That's my hope. In that case, it's too early to talk about standings, but for me, I know I wasn't on like the preview show or anything like that on here. I really want to see the Angels make the postseason again. I mean, we've had an 8-year drought. It doesn't feel good to continue to lose. I think we have the drought just like the Tigers, 8 years, and it's not fun because everybody knows we're wasting Shohei and Mike Trout and all that, and it's not fun. So that's really it on the Angels. They have one more game, like I mentioned, tomorrow afternoon I was about to say Safeco, but T-Mobile Field, where the All-Star game is going to be this year, by the way. And then it's the home opener and Saturday and Sunday with the Blue Jays, who, Ben Cruz is going to be a big threat to maybe win that East. And I should be there Friday and Saturday for the home opener and the next night with the Otani bobblehead. And I can't wait to do all the material with Halos in the infield there, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And then to see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Play for Toronto, and his father, senior, will throw out the first pitch on Fridays. So I think that adds a little fun to that. So I will go to Ben here first about your Red Sox. Now I saw that they've lost well, I think it's a sweep against Pittsburgh, unfortunately, at Fenway, but they did have a wild and wacky series against Baltimore on the weekend and on opening day. So how's your Red Sox doing, Ben?
Let's just put it nicely. If I had to put a grade so far on the season, I'd probably give it a solid D, maybe a C minus to be nice. I wasn't very high on this team coming in. I wasn't very high on the specific pitching additions that Heim Bloom and the roster made. I mean, I think he's still in the overall state of Tampa Bay North, which I think a lot of Red Sox fans are very, discouraged about, including myself. Of course, it's the life, of course, after Xander Bogaerts and JD Martinez. So it's really just a roster of a lot of unknowns. It kind of reminds me a lot of the Patriots, a lot of guys, a lot of unknowns. So, and I think that so far, I know tonight the hitting was kind of disappeared, but I really think, if it wasn't for the Ryan McKenna blunder, we probably have one win. I mean, on Sunday against the Orioles was a pretty solid one, I'd say. But our pitching, I know, James, you said your pitching's bad. I mean, our pitching's legitimately been god awful. I mean, we're just not even getting, we're not even getting pitching through like 3-4 innings with our starters. We have Cutter Crawford, we have, Tanner Houck. Tanner Houck pitched okay on Sunday. Chris Sale, Chris Sale's been pitching and it feels like 2 years. So you just don't know what kind of Chris Sale you're getting. And of course, Saturday he comes back and he looked terrible. I mean, he was the first to admit it. He got absolutely shelled by Baltimore, which is going to be a very good lineup. But I know his velocity wasn't great, but I love how the first week it's a lot of the overreactions. But it's obviously another thing too about the eye test because the Red Sox were last in the division last year. So a lot of this specifically right now, I'm just not going to be shocked a lot about for down the rest of the season. I can already tell right now it's going to be a big roller coaster of a season with this Red Sox team because I thought that this lineup was going to be a little bit of a question, but I think they can actually hit. There's some guys outside of Devers I think that can make noise. Yoshida looks like he has some potential pop. I don't think he has a lot of pop, but I think that his plate discipline so far has been excellent, and he's the cleanup hitter. Duvall was the player of the week this past week. Of course, he had the walk-off home run. It looks like his swing's going to be built for Fenway. I always loved him in Atlanta, so I think that was a good move Heim actually made. Verdugo, Kike, of course, a lot of former Dodgers. Kenley Jansen actually looked pretty good. The pen, I guess you could say the pen overall when they've gone the chance.
Looks like we lost Ben, I think, Isaiah.
Yeah, unfortunately, looks like he froze and is having some technical difficulties. But Ben, do we have you?
Yeah.
You guys hear me?
Yeah,
I'm back. I should be back. I was talking about the specifically on the Pirates series. We have one more tomorrow. We have Kluber on the mound, and Kluber, that was one of the guys I think Heim Bloom's going to miss on because I think Heim is thinking that this is the old Corey Kluber of old. We only paid him $10 million, and we could have brought a guy like Evaldi back, who I think Evaldi was one of our best pitchers last year, or Michael Walker. So I think specifically Heim is looking at this roster right now, and he has to find a way to. We got to really address the pitching rotation next year, I think, and we got to get a true ace. If we want to be able to compete with a lot of these top tier teams, we just can't have our offense be able to bail us out every single night. And of course, tonight our pitching actually wasn't bad. We had Nick Pivetta on the mound; he wasn't bad. We only had 4 runs that we gave up. It feels like a broken record now, but yeah, it's been overall frustrating. Pitching wise, it hasn't been great. I wasn't really high on the pitching, but I think it could be a lot better. The hitting, I think, has been okay, but I don't think it's going to be sustainable. And I think the pen could be okay. So I would say it's going to be a C minus D as of right now. Not great, but I think it could be much better. About the time will tell. I mean, look at Houston. Houston was defending champs last year. They just lost to Detroit in a series. They lost the series to them as of now. So I'm not saying we're as better than Houston, but crazy things have happened, and Pittsburgh was the better team in this series. So we have another one tomorrow with them, and then we actually play the Tigers going there for our first road trip this coming weekend.
Yeah, I forgot what the new schedule. Everybody plays everybody, and it's 3 times. Freeway series though is twice, so that's weird. So to get to Isaiah's team, the Oakland Athletics, and does this look familiar, Isaiah? Let me hold that up. How did I get this, Isaiah? I don't know. But your
Hey, you
A's,
won tonight.
yeah, they took the first game of that series and the first game of the other series, and you were there, of course, for some games. So the A's here, they're facing Cleveland. They had a wild loss. Yesterday? It was 12-11. That was amazing to hear of. I didn't really know about that. And I know you've been up and down on this team. They did get the win. Trevor May, by the way, he has a really good YouTube channel, really good content. So if you're into, players and they're talking about the things going on, as they're playing, as they're on the road or whatever, I think he's a really good follow there. But what do you think about your A's, Isaiah, so far? Just 5 games in?
Well, I know so far in this show we've talked about pitching being bad. James mentioned the pitching being bad for his Angels. Ben mentioned the pitching being bad for his Red Sox. I don't think that the both of you can touch what I've witnessed, especially pitching wise. Because especially with the Phillies, I mean, giving up, I don't know how many. It seemed like they gave up like 40 runs in that 3-game series against the Texas Rangers. And then the A's, on the other hand, that bullpen, every time one reliever comes in, he's given up like 2 runs per appearance. So, yeah, the thing with the A's is that let's start with the A's. Yesterday I was very deflated and devastated about the A's loss. It's good that they actually bounced back and won tonight. But the Oakland A's, I would say this. If you had asked me about the A's last night, if we had done a show, I probably would have went on a whole 15-minute rant about how the A's should be sent down to AAA because they are absolutely a garbage baseball team and all that. But you know what? After the win tonight, I'm probably going to give them a C because who expected the Oakland A's in the first 5 games of the season after facing the Angels and now against the Guardians, 2 teams that, could be, in the hunt for a wild card spot, the Indians in the division and also the Angels probably for a wild card. Who expected the A's to be 2-3? I think being 2-3 is actually really good considering how low the expectations was. But when you look at the Oakland A's, first off, you can't score 11 runs and lose. There's if you score 11 runs, there's no way you can lose that game. You can't. Yeah, you can't lose that game. Their offense, I think, will be able to hit. They have some major league hitters in their lineup, which they didn't have last year because the whole lineup from top to bottom, minus Sean Murphy and Ramon Laureano, were mostly minor leaguers. And they were just getting overpowered and overpowered and overpowered on every pitch. But then this season, they've added Jesus Aguilar. They added, they have Ramon Laureano there. They have, other guys that are major league hitters, such as Aledmus Diaz, Jace Peterson, who puts up major league at bats. And I think that's the one thing that you didn't see last year from the A's that you're going to see this year is you're going to see a lot more major league at bats because they have a lot of major league hitters in their lineup. You're not going to see a lot of strikeouts. You're not going to see a lot of guys getting overpowered. You're going to see guys that are able to actually stand in the batter's box and actually have a fighting chance of either getting a hit or a double or a home run instead of just standing at the plate and just striking out. So I think offensively the A's will be able to hit, and they've shown they're going to be able to hit. But my worries is the pitching. The thing is, the Oakland A's bullpen after last night, after the last two games against the James's Angels, in which, I mean, I went to that first game and I was on the phone telling James, by the time I went to that first game, the score was already like 12-0. That's how, like, I entered into the Coliseum like 12-0 or 13-0, and I was like, why the heck did I even go to that game? And the worst part was it was Fujinami t-shirt giveaway, but since I came to the game so late, they ran out of the t-shirt. So I paid like $20 for a ticket, and it was 13, and I think it ended up being like 13-1 or something like that.
Did people show up?
I did, and like, well, by the time when I was showing up, a lot of people were already leaving, even though it was like midway through the game, just because like they knew the score was what it was, and they knew that the A's were not going to win. But everybody in that bullpen, except for probably Familia, Trevor May, and Sam Moll, they all need to be gutted. They're not major league pitchers. Like a lot of these guys the A's have in the bullpen, they're guys that belong in the minors. There's several guys that had like 4-point-something ERAs in the minor leagues. Like, how do you have a 4-point-something ERA in the minors and expect to have success in the major leagues? You're obviously not. So I think pitching-wise for the A's, it's going to be a big concern. Starting pitching, Kyle Muller was tremendous on opening day or opening night, I mean. But then after that, it's been straight up hot garbage. Fujinami, who came over from Japan, he looked great the first 2 innings of that game, and then he gave up like 9 runs in the third inning, and that's what was all.
No, 11.
Yeah. So Fujinami, I feel like he's gonna be good if he can get his command down and if he can get his control down. But he's got the stuff. It's just about putting together the control, and if he's able to do that, I think he could be a really good pitcher in this league. And then, the other guys, Caprillion was decent. He wasn't the best. Ken Waldachuk was good for the first 4 innings, and then basically the bottom fell out on him. Same thing with Caprillion. And then Sears tonight, he was all right, but it's like the A's just have, this rotation where you have a bunch of guys that, are just all right pitchers on a good day, and on the worst days, they are just horrendous pitchers. So I think right now for the A's, if I have to give them a grade, it's probably a C- just because they have actually been able to get past expectations. They are 2-3 after the first 5 games. They can be 500 after tomorrow. They're not in last place so far, thankfully. And the lineup can actually hit a bit, and that's a welcome sign, because last year, what was very unbearable to watch was the fact that not only were we losing games, but we were getting beat like 7-1 or getting beat like 6-0 or getting beat like 10-0, and we're getting like shut out or only getting 1 run each game. But now you can actually hit, get some offense, score some runs. I think it'll be a little bit of a better year for the A's, but pitching is the main concern. And also, I hate to say it, but at the trade deadline, I think 3 years ago, the Oakland A's were one team, I think, that were in on Max Scherzer. Like, I guess they were willing to go all in that year before they traded everybody. They should have traded away Nick Allen. He was one of their top prospects at that time. And, the A's were like, no, we're not going to trade him because he's going to be tremendous on defense. He's going to be great with the bat. He's going to be like Marco Scutaro in his prime. But from what I've seen, the guy cannot get the ball to first base. He's bouncing every throw to first base, or throwing it high, or throwing to the right of the first baseman. And on offense, he's absolutely pitiful, and he just can't hit. So they should have traded him, and I don't think he's a big leaguer. And sadly, James and Ben, I don't know if you guys know this, but I made every year I make Oakland A's predictions for the season. And I picked this guy, Nick Allen, to hit 300 with like 13 home runs and I don't know how many RBIs. And that's looking like an absolute bust of a prediction thus far.
You want a mulligan on that?
What's up?
You want a mulligan on that?
Yeah, I'll probably take one as of right now, but it's not looking good. So, I mean, 2-3, it's all right so far. I mean, we're not that bad. So I'll give them a C-.
it could be worse. You could be the Philadelphia Phillies at 1-4, getting off the schneid against the New York Yankees today on TBS. Kyle Schwarber hit his 200th home run. Brandon Marshall also hit a home run. That just figures. He leaves my team, he goes somewhere else, and does so much better. That always happens, it seems like, with the Angels. But, seeing that series in Texas, Isaiah, and that just must have been a horrific time that whole weekend. I can imagine what you were feeling. Get that? Texas destroyed the first two games. I mean, who was pitching? Josh Harrison in that ninth inning on Saturday, right? That was That was amazing. I thought I would never ever see that again. But guess what? When you're down 16-3 or whatever the final score was, that's going to happen. And then you lost 7-11. Sunday was 2-1, so you made a little progress there. But what do you think about your starting pitching so far in your bullpen, Isaiah, with Philadelphia and the rest of the Phillies? How are you feeling so far?
I think that during the first series in Texas, I went into our group chat, and I don't know how many times I said that Rob Thompson should have been fired. I think that's probably like, if it was an over-under of 5, it's probably double that. The thing about the Phillies is the first 4 games was an absolute disaster. It's good that they won tonight, but their offense, we know they're going to be able to hit. But it's the pitching. Nola got roughed up in game 1. Then Wheeler got roughed up in game 2. And then Falter was decent in game 3. It wasn't his fault. They just couldn't hit. But yesterday, Taijuan Walker, their prize free agent acquisition, he got roughed up. And when you look at this rotation, I think from top to bottom, I thought the rotation was going to be solid. I thought, you have Walker there, you have Nola, you have Wheeler, you also have Suarez coming back. They just needed a fifth starter. And unfortunately, Painter, one of our top prospects, got hurt in spring training and now probably won't be there for the Phillies this season. And I just think for the Phillies, their bullpen, I think, is better than last season and better than the last 2 seasons. The lineup can hit, but it's the starting pitching. And the starting pitching in the first 3-4 games was just atrocious, and it was just flat out garbage in the first 2 games. And I give credit to the Texas Rangers offense. I said, I think during our MLB preview show last week that I picked Texas to win the World Series. I think that I'm really that high on Texas. Texas is going to be a great team. They have a great offense. They got, really good lights out pitching now. They're going to be a great team to watch. But I think for the Phillies, just getting embarrassed the way you did, like, it was just so humiliating, and it was something that I wasn't, used to seeing. And, I thought that if the Phillies were going to lose, it was going to be that they were going to, score a lot of runs and, lose like 9-8 or lose like 12-11 like the A's did last night. But for them to lose like 16-3 and then blow a 5-0 leading in the first game of the season and lose like 9-7 or 11-7, I think it was. I didn't expect that, and it was just so humiliating to watch. But it's a good sign, though, that the offense seems to be picking it up, getting back into the swing of things. The pitching has gotten better the last couple of games, but I think it's going to be something to watch. And I think that, for the Phillies, I don't know if Rob Thompson is the right man for the job. Like, I know he led the Phillies to the World Series last season, but I think it might be a case where, and I think, James, you know this, and I think, Ben, you know this, when a manager gets fired and then the interim comes in, they immediately start to have success because the group, feels bad for not playing hard and getting the manager fired. They immediately start to have success. And then they want to play for the interim guy because they love him so much. But then after he gets named the job and when he has a full season, it's like you start to realize that, maybe he wasn't that great of a manager. Maybe it was just because the adrenaline was pumping from those guys, and they were just rallying around the manager when he was the interim, trying to get him the regular job. Because a lot of the decisions I saw from Rob Thompson, it was just awful decisions when it came to the bullpen, awful decisions when it came to pinch hitters, and awful decisions when it came to who to pitch to and who not to pitch to. It was just like that. And I don't know if Rob Thompson is the guy moving forward. It was very telling when Dave Dombrowski, when they were introducing Rob Thompson as the interim, as the permanent manager, that he said that we'll see what happens moving forward. He said, and I quote, that it's going to be a year by year evaluation. That doesn't show me that you have much confidence in this manager. If it's a year by year evaluation, and the fact that they waited a long time when Thompson was having that big chunk of success, the fact that they waited until like after the Phillies won their first playoff series to give him the job, it just shows me that they don't really have a lot of confidence in him. And I think the Phillies should have went out and got Bruce Bochy, because if Bruce Bochy was available, I know Thompson was having a lot of success. He led you to the World Series, but Bruce Bochy is a proven championship manager. Rob Thompson's a guy that's never managed before last season, and it would have sucked to see Thompson not get the job considering what he did, but you have a chance to hire a proven World Series championship manager. You gotta take that chance anytime you get. So for the Phillies, just a disastrous start to the season. And here's a hot take I'll give you guys. My first hot take of the night: if the Phillies don't make the playoffs, I could see Rob Thompson getting fired, because I don't think that he was Dombrowski's guy. I think Dombrowski hired him because of the success that they went on after he got hired, and he didn't expect it. But I think Dombrowski wants someone else. And I think that if the Phillies don't make the playoffs, I think that Rob Thompson could be one and done in Philly.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing about intern managers. They're good for that one, half of the season or whatever it is. If there's any promise, you keep them around, but you take that risk. I can vouch for that with Phil Nevin and the Angels. He's here just for this season. It's playoffs or bust for him. I feel like, though, Perry Manassian might hire his own guy, and fire Nevin no matter what, unless you win the World Series, which it ain't gonna happen in Anaheim. But that's the tricky thing. And Ben, I don't know if you want to comment on intern managers and the roles that they have. Whenever a locker room seem to be lost because of a manager like Joe Girardi and Joe Madden last year, and I think you can remember Bobby Valentine back in, 2011, just losing that locker room in Boston, and how fragile that can get when you lose a locker room. And then you have an intern manager come in, and either they're going to respond or not. And it's very tough with the Phillies. But the thing you have to remember, it almost seems like a lost year without Hoskins, Harper, half of the season, whatever it may be. Ben, how do you think the Phillies will do with this manager Thompson? Can they get it back together, or are they just lost without those injured players?
I think the Phillies are going to be okay. I think that once they get Bryce Harper, they're going to start to kind of be the Phillies that I think we know about. He's really the voice of the team. He's kind of the engine that goes. I know losing Rhys Hoskins for the season is a big loss for them, but I think if you're looking at the Phillies right now, the Mets, as of right now, have had a slow start to their year. They just got absolutely rocked the last couple of nights. I think that the Mets are going to be fine. The Braves, of course, they lost Max Fried. He's on the IL. So you're looking not just the Phillies right now, but the NL East right now as a whole. There's a lot of teams that are off to slow start. So I think personally, that there's some teams like my Red Sox. My Red Sox, like last season in April, we really couldn't, get to a really bad April because the rest of our season is going to be a bloodbath with a lot of our tough division games during the summertime. Now with our season this year, our April is more pivotal than ever because we get off to another bad April. It could be potentially another last place finish, And with that being said, then you can start to have the scrutiny of, well, is it going to be blended to Alex Cora, which I hope that's the case, or what's Heim Bloom? Because Heim Bloom has now been there for 4 years, I think, going on potentially 5, and he's lost. He's not been to the playoffs 3 out of the 5 times he's been the GM of the Red Sox. So I think specifically for the Phillies, though, that they should be fine. I think specifically that their pitching probably get a lot better throughout the year. I mean, Aaron Nola is in a contract year, so you would think that he'll probably be pitching for that. Zach Wheeler is a very good number 2. Taijuan Walker, I mean, he was a potential All-Star last year in the first half. I remember last year for the Mets. So, I mean, I look at it this way. I think, I mean, the Rob Thompson situation, I obviously don't watch every single Phillies game, but I think specifically for the Phillies, I don't think it's just the Phillies that have had a slow start. I think it's a lot of that division. And so I wouldn't really really worry about it too much. It's just a slow start, and that's why the overreaction is a lot of fun on opening weekend. Because sometimes you know that there's some teams like the Oakland Athletics or a team like my Red Sox to be like, okay, well that's it, call the season, stuff like that. But it could really be that the case. And then there's all those other teams like the Phillies. They're like 1 win today, and it feels like they're celebrating like the World Series. I think everybody could take a relaxation show. The intern, by the way, James. I don't want to cross sports anything, but that reminds me a little bit of the Boston Celtics because Joe Mazzulla had to replace Ime Udoka, and that was a big replacement, a big aspect, especially for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to find cohesion, how to work together with a new coach after this old coach was just in the NBA Finals last year. And obviously all the scrutiny and all the stuff behind the scenes. So I think really you look at the Bobby Valentine situation, it's not just the person as a whole, it's the cohesion of how the teammates feel around that specific head coach. And if it's not working all together, the thing could just blow up in flames. So I think with the Phillies, though, they have a lot of guys that are veterans. They were just in the World Series last year. I really wouldn't worry about it way too much until potentially maybe in the mid part of the season. Then we could maybe have a discussion.
We were talking about the NL East, and that brings us to the games of note on April 4th of 2023. So the Miami Marlins defeated the Minnesota Twins 1-0. They lost yesterday to Minnesota. But the reigning Cy Young Award winner in the National League, Sandy Alcantara, threw a complete game shutout in his second start here of 2023. Let me run down his lines. So 9 innings pitched, of course, a rarity, by the way. He only gave up 3 hits, no runs, 1 walk, and 5 strikeouts. His ERA at 1.8.4. I would have to believe, guys, that he is the front runner to win it again in the National League. I know it's early, but if they could give him some run support, I mean, they only give him 1. But if they can at least give him 2 or 3 whenever he starts, he has a good chance. And I think to shut down Joey Gallo, he's been having a good start so far with Minnesota. Seems like he found something there with the Twins. But I'll go to Isaiah first on this. Did you see the Alcantara start, and were you impressed by it?
I did, and I was very impressed. He was very filthy, and he was nasty in this game. The Twins just, their hitters just couldn't pick up the pitches that he was throwing. And, with the Marlins, I wouldn't count out Miami in terms of getting a wild card. They have the rotation to do it. They've got Alcantara, they got Luzardo, they have a lot of young, talented, nasty starting pitchers in their rotation. Their bullpen has a lot of guys in there that can throw, great heat as well. For Miami, the pitching's not the problem. The pitching's going to be the biggest strength of this team. The biggest issue will be, can they score runs? And when you look at this lineup, you have a rise there. You have Soler, Garrett Cooper, Jazz Chisholm, Abisayu Garcia, Gene Segura, and Jacob Stallings. They should be able to put up some runs because they have some pretty good hitters on this team. And also, don't forget about Yuli Gurriel as well. He has the day off today, I think. But for the Marlins, their pitching is going to be what carries them. And I know Garcia had the home run today that propelled them to the win today. But for Miami, it's going to be the pitching. If their pitching can just dominate and keep them in games, because we know their pitching is so good and so electric that they're going to be in every single game that they're going to play. So if the pitcher can keep them in the games, the lineup scrap a few runs in, I could see the Marlins definitely making a push for the wild card and definitely surprising a lot of people because they have some really good young talent in Miami. As far as the Twins, I think the biggest takeaway from this game, because we knew this, or we saw that this was a pitcher's duel between Kenta Maeda and Sandy Alcantara. The biggest takeaway for me from the Twins was how good Kenta Maeda was in return. Remember, this guy missed, I think, the whole year last year because of Tommy John surgery. And when pitchers come back from Tommy John, you never really know how they are. And Maeda pitched 5 innings. He was very solid. He gave up only the 1 run.
9 strikeouts.
Yeah, and he had 9 strikeouts as well, 3 hits, no walks. He was very, very solid, very, very efficient. And I think that, his velocity, I also watched, it was actually up from his days as a Dodger and also pre-Tommy John when he was with the Twins. So that's a good thing to see. But I think that for the Twins, if Maeda can get going and if he can look like the way he did, it's just going to add to a very scary rotation. And I think the Marlins, they got a chance. They got a chance to maybe make the wild card because I know their pitching is going to keep them in every game.
By the way, this game today, this pitcher's duel, it was only an hour and 57 minutes long. I credit them. That was awesome to see. And by the way, tomorrow in that rubber game of this series, Pablo Lopez faces his former team, the Marlins. So that would be something interesting to see. Ben, what did you think about Sandy's performance today against Minnesota?
Well, that wasn't a game I was able to watch. I do have the MLB TV package, so I'm able to watch a lot of the games, but I wasn't able to watch that one, unfortunately. But I'm not surprised. I agree with you, James. I think he's going to be the front runner again to win the National League for Cy Young. You take Jacob deGrom out of the mix. I think by far in the National League, you look at him and you look at Corbin Burns. I think between him, Burns, maybe Brandon Woodruff, those are kind of the class now in the National League. I could probably think of other guys like Strider and Fried and other guys as well. But Alcantara has absolute filthy stuff. And you look at overall with him in Miami, you brought him to a bigger potential market. I think that his name just keeps on going more and more and more. The recognition with him just being in a smaller market just says a lot for his overall, caliber. And to go 9 innings against a Twins lineup that I think could be able to make some noise. You look at Buxton, you look at potentially Gallo. I know that Gallo is a New York Yankee, and he was absolutely booed like crazy last year. So he seems just like one of those guys that go into another place, a smaller type market, and doing his thing. Gotta feel good for him. But just a really good performance by Alcantara. Like I said, I don't watch it. I'm not surprised. I mean, his overall stuff, repeats for itself. So, good for Sandy. And I think that specifically he's going to be a must-watch TV start almost every single time he's out there because he's definitely a guy that will go out and give you 5-6 innings, typically on a weekly type basis. And he has a lot of premier stuff, specifically his fastball, sinker, and his all his off speed. I agree with Isaiah too with Miami. I don't think they'll be a wild card specifically because I think they're going to be just a very tough division. But I do think that they're starting to kind of get pieces to become potentially a contender for years to come. They're a very young team. You look at Chisholm, you look at Cooper, you look at Luzardo. Of course, as they're starting, I think their bullpen could potentially have some work to be done. But I do think that their starters are really good, and I think that could really help them a lot. And you also can't forget, I think that Luis Ariz for Pablo Sanchez, backward baseball, Pablo Lopez was for sure one of the most win-win trades that we saw in this offseason. I think Ariz, a batting champ, going to Miami could help them in the leadoff hole. Pablo Lopez, who I actually really wanted for the Red Sox, another guy the Red Sox missed, call me shocked, but he going to the Twins and helping the Twins rotation ball out. I think that was a really good win-win trade for them. So overall, good trade, good overall performance by Alcantara though, and not surprised by that overall effort.
So the other Florida team, the high flying undefeated, the lone undefeated Tampa Bay Rays. Jinx, they'll lose tomorrow. They defeated the Nationals 10-5, and looking at this game, actually the score was 10-6, but they're 5-0. Washington 1-4. Washington got 3 in the first, 1 in the second, 1 in the eighth, and then for insurance, they had 5 in the ninth, which it always feels good to get. Thompson got the win, and Finnegan got the loss. Finnegan's ERA is at 27. They have a lot of lefties in their lineup due the Rays, and it showed today. Diaz, Lowell, Razorino, Franco. You look at those 4 in the lineup, and right there you're in fear because, man, that's a hard 4 to get out at the top of the lineup. And I was kind of down on the Rays this year. I mean, there's still a lot of time left, but when you have those 4 going, you still have McClanahan pitching. It's unfortunate about the other pitcher being out. Yeah, I really liked when in 2020 he was like the main guy for me in the Rosarina, and unfortunately, I don't think we'll see him this year. I'm not sure, but I'll go to Ben for this one since it's a AL East topic. What did you think about the Rays' big score win 10-6 over Washington today?
I'm not surprised about the Rays specific, their hot start. I think that you look at the AL East as a whole. You have the Jays, you have the Yankees, and you have the Orioles even, who, of course, I think could make some noise this year. But the Rays are by far the most peskiest team in our division. So it does not surprise me one bit. You could look at that lineup and be like, oh, they have potentially some guys that potentially, no, like literally every single guy potentially literally in their lineup, at least from between Brandon Lau, between Wander Franco. Wander Franco is a legit star, so I can't, discredit him for anything. Yandy Diaz legitimately might have something against the Red Sox. It's every single time he plays against us, I don't think that we ever get him out. Could you not? It's legitimately crazy. So I essentially, every time I put, do my scorecard, I always put a hit, which I always joke my brother about. But yeah, no, this is not surprising. The Rays, of course, playing against Detroit, playing against the Nationals, you could say, well, they probably are not playing so far against great competition. But good start for them. I don't like them at all, being in my division at all. But I like McClanahan a lot. He's a very good dominant pitcher. I actually have him for AL Cy Young this year. I think that he could really have a magnificent season if he's healthy. He was an All-Star last year. He actually started the All-Star game for the American League, I believe. So he is a very good overall. He's going to have a very good overall season. Glasnow, I think, could be back potentially mid-part of the season. I'm not sure. But so you have him. You have Glasnow. You also have Jeffrey Springs, who I think could be a really good guy for the Rays. Calling me shocked. The Rays are very similar to the Dodgers. I feel like they have a lab for pitching. Because Jeffrey Springs, when he was with the Red Sox, I mean, this guy was terrible. And then he'd bring him over to Tampa Bay, and he feels like he's like the next Sandy Koufax. So I don't know, but he looks like he's amazing as like their third starter. And then they have some other guys out there that could absolutely pitch. Their bullpen's absolutely loaded. They have Fairbanks. They have I think Patino could potentially be in their pen as well. They have guys left and right there, just absolute studs in their pitching. The only thing about the Rays when it comes to the playoffs is they always go through like the nerd analytic type where, they'll have like a bullpen game and they pitch in, pitch out. You can't expect to have that when you're in the playoffs specifically. So they're able to kind of doing it during the regular season. That's why they're very good and they're annoyingly good. But I do think that their lineup is going to give teams a lot of fits because I know it at firsthand, being a Red Sox fan and being in that division for pretty much my whole life. So it's not surprising that the Rays won against the Nationals. The Nationals, I don't think, are going to have a good year at all. They were building. They have C.J. Brahms, who could be a very decent, promising prospect. They have Candelaria, who could be a potential bat. But, I'm not surprised about that overall start. I do think that once the Rays start to face more of the division, they'll obviously start to slip a bit. Of course, the Blue Jays right now, they're playing the Cardinals. They just got absolutely walloped by the Cardinals. And the Jays are also playing Kansas City, who I think they lost yesterday, but they won today. But, their pitching's kind of a slow start. But the Rays, of course, I'm not surprised about. They're going to be a pesky team all year. So, obviously, good start for them.
By the way, the Rays play an important 4-game series against the Red Sox in St. Petersburg next week. And with the less divisional games, those divisional games become more important. But before they play Boston, Oakland comes to St. Petersburg. And that will segue right to Isaiah's emphasis on this. So, saying they win tomorrow, which is a afternoon start in Washington, do you think the winning streak continues as they face the A's for the Rays? Do you think the winning streak keeps going past the Oakland A's? Do they steamroll Oakland to face Boston?
I think they're actually going to lose one game against Oakland, because I think that a lot of these teams, when they're red hot, when they're going on these like really big streaks, when they fall, it's not to the team that they're supposed to lose to. It's the team that they're not supposed to lose to. I remember 2 years ago, the A's went on a 13-game winning streak, and who did it end against? The Baltimore flippin' Orioles. And it ended like I think it was a game was like 1-0 when the Orioles pitching at that time was one of the worst pitching staffs in all of baseball, and we got shut out by the Baltimore Orioles when we still had guys like Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, Chris Davis, and all the guys that we had. So
the good old days.
Yeah, I think the A's will take one of the games. I think Friday will probably be the game that they do take, because Kyle Muller is absolutely electric. Or no, he's going to be starting tomorrow, actually. But Fujinami will be starting against the Rays on Friday. And that's kind of like one game that I'm like, I don't know about, because, the Rays are going to be able to feast on his control issues. And the Rays are a team that, they like to, work a lot. They work at bats. They take a lot of pitches. They make the pitchers work. And when you have a guy that has control issues in Fujinami, that's a recipe for disaster. But I do think the A's will take one. It's either going to be, I think, the Friday game, because when Fujinami is on, he's on. But when he's off, then it's a really big disaster. But I think that since the Rays haven't seen him, he's from Japan. I think the first time seeing him, I think the Rays will be very confused as to the stuff that he's throwing. And as I see what James is doing with the towel and wiping away the but I do think the A's will take one at least. They're not going to get swept.
Okay, so let's go to the Detroit and Houston game. They're on the 4th. I know it's tomorrow already. But Spencer Torgerson had 3 hits. He had a massive 2-run home run to help the surprise Tigers defeat the Astros in Game 2 of that series. The Tigers won 6-3. They got to Framber Valdez. He is their main guy on Houston's staff. He got the loss with 7 innings pitched, 8 hits, 2 runs, and 9 strikeouts. But they also got to their bullpen. Kyle Tucker, who, guys, I don't know. I don't think you guys will agree with me. You guys would probably call me crazy, too. I think Kyle Tucker of Houston could be the MVP this year. I don't know. I just have that feeling. This dude comes up clutch so much. And his defense, the way he just robs home runs, it's nonchalant. Maybe he doesn't get style points for that.
He might be the most underrated, underappreciated potential American League player I probably will see. I definitely could say that. In the World Baseball Classic for US, I mean, with all the prolific stars like Trey Turner and Mike Trout, I mean, the guy was carrying it for at least some of the earlier games. So I don't disagree with you, James, at all. I mean, the Astros are just so loaded that you could honestly, Altuve and Abreu now for them. He's just kind of there, and he just realized that there's so many good guys there. He's just kind of there, and no, yeah, he's great. He's a really good player.
He was 2 for 3 tonight. He had a home run. He walked. He had a couple of RBIs and also scored a run. Did Kyle Tucker? I've seen him so much against the Angels that I'm like, oh, he's the guy, and he makes all these great postseason plays. But getting back to Spencer Torkelson and the Tigers. Now we're not hot on the Tigers. I'm imagining. I know Isaiah was picking them to win the Central last year.
He's gonna change it after the beating the Astros in on April.
Yeah.
Well, I did pick Kansas City this year, so I did pick another lowly AL Central team, and I don't know. I think they're off to a terrible start as well.
Okay, so I'll start with Isaiah on this one real quick. And by the way, the next game will be moved to Friday because of weather. I'm trying to figure out why, but the next Astro game, I guess. But Spencer Torkelson, I know Detroit needs a lot, and I know they have Javi Baez, Miguel Cabrera in his last season. But Isaiah, I know you picked him first last year, but do you think Detroit, with this win against the Astros, can they do something more to this season that you could say, hey, that maybe they're going to be a wild card this season?
My biggest thoughts. I'm gonna talk about the game first before I get into the Tigers and them moving forward this season. When you look at this game, have you guys noticed that every time the Tigers play the Astros, the Tigers always beat the Astros? Like, it's been like that ever since AJ Hinch has taken over as the manager. I think the Tigers won the season series 2 years ago, and then they won it again last year, and then now they go into Houston, and then they're gonna at least take 2 out of 3 from the Astros. AJ Hinch just knows how to beat the Astros, to beat his former team in H-Town. He just does it every year. So I'm not surprised that the Tigers won. In terms of this game, Spencer Torkelson looked like he has looked like the number 1 pick in the draft that he was drafted in a couple of years ago. He is definitely living up to that hype. Riley Green as well. He was one of the top prospects in all of baseball just a couple of seasons ago. He's looking like a guy that is living up to the hype. They have, Matt Buehrle. I think that was one of the most underrated pickups of this offseason. This is a guy that when I was watching him play in Philly, this was a guy that played great defense in the outfield. He was very fast. He always put the ball or the bat on the ball. Never really struck out a whole lot, and he worked the count and worked long at bats. And he's a very, very underrated hitter. And I think that, with him being the leadoff hitter, I think that it's good for Detroit because when he's the guy that's the leadoff hitter, with the way that he swings the bat, the ability to put the bat on the ball, not strike out a whole lot, steal bags, also be able to work long at bats, it sets the tone for you. And also it sets the tone for the entire lineup. So I like him at the top of the order for Detroit. He had 2 hits today, a walk and an RBI. Baez needs to get going because with the way the Baez contract is looking like right now, it's looking like a bust. And it's looking like a terrible, terrible contract for the Detroit Tigers. I know he was 0 for 5, but he's got to get going. If the Tigers are going to do anything this year, it's going to be because of 3 guys: Baez, Green, and Torkelson. Those 3 guys in the middle of that lineup, they're going to have to be the reasons why the Detroit Tigers do anything this year. It's because of them. As far as their pitching, they have some young pitchers that can pitch. Matt Manning, they had Spencer Turnbull, they have Tariq Schoolball, they have, I believe they had Casey Mize as well, but he's going to undergo Tommy John surgery. Their rotation has a lot of intrigue in them. And I think that if they can put it together, Detroit is like Kansas City and Miami. They have a lot of intrigue. They have a lot of young talent, but they just got to put it together. And I think for the Tigers, it's a good start what we're seeing right now. I think the bullpen definitely needs some work. But could I see the Tigers making a wild card push? Ben and James, I know it's just 2 games, and I know it's the first week, but if the Tigers put it together, I think they could definitely do it because they have the lineup. You know, they have Green, they have Torkelson, they've got Matt Vierling at the top, they've got Baez, they have Miggy Cabrera. You know, he's still got a little bit left in the tank. Their pitchers are very talented. And I think in the American League, you look at the American League, you know, Houston, I think, will take a step back just because we've seen it right now. Their pitching is not that good. You lose Verlander. They've lost, you know, a lot of guys when it comes to that rotation throughout the last couple of seasons, and that's taken a toll on their pitching staff. They don't really have like an ace right now. They have Valdez, McCullers. He's coming back from injury, but he's injury prone and he's been inconsistent. We know their lineup can hit, but it's the pitching. That's what I'm worried about, and that's why I picked the Texas Rangers to win the AL West, is because the Texas Rangers, I feel like right now, have better pitching than the Houston Astros. And, you know, for the Astros, the starting pitching is a big concern. The bullpen's also a big concern because before Presley, there's really nobody that you can really trust. You know, Stanek got roughed up today. Seth Martinez, he got roughed up. I think Neris, he's in their bullpen, but he's also hot and cold a lot. So the bullpen's a big concern for me, and also the starting pitching, because a lot of the guys that are there right now, they're not really number ones. I mean, Valdez, you know, Javier, they were great last season, but they don't have that track record of being number one. So I think for the Astros, they're going to be okay, but the pitching's going to be the big concern throughout the season.
Let's go to you, Ben, real quick about Spencer Torkelson. I know he's an up-and-coming guy. Do you think he has a chance maybe being an all-star, and what did you think about his performance tonight in Houston?
Yeah, I mean, I think the kid has a lot of promise. I mean, there's been the last couple of seasons he hasn't kind of lived up to yet of what he could be a part of. The Tigers, I think, are kind of a similar team like Miami. I think that they have a really tough division. You know, in the AL Central, there's a lot of teams like the Guardians with a really good pitching, decent hitting. The White Sox, I think, could have a much better season this year. So you look at those top two. You know, I think Minnesota is probably better than the Tigers as of right now, and the Kansas City Royals. So it would be really tough to see the Tigers are trying to make the postseason, even though that they won against the Astros in April. But whatever that means. But I think that the Tigers, they have some guys that could potentially be, you know, I think Miguel Cabrera could have a very good last season. I think they have some guys that can, you know, you can kind of take a look at it and kind of see what your future's like. I mean, Riley Green's probably going to be a really good player for them, really good defender. Torkelson, I think, you know, if he has a really good season, the Tigers at least have the fan interest pretty much to watch for a lot of this season. They might not be a playoff team, but I think that they can keep their fans involved, because I think last year was just so bad for them that I think they might make a little bit of a step up. But with the really tough enough division, I don't think it's going to be good enough to get into one of those. Well, I probably have them at like mid-70s in terms of wins-wise, like a 75 and 95, probably something like there. You know, I think, you know, I know that they were talking this offseason too about moving on from potential pieces, you know, like Tarek Skubal. You know, they might be sellers. They might be looking at potentially who to kind of move on to for a contending type team, like a Gregory Soto from like this past offseason that went to Isaiah's Phillies. But they have some guys that they're very interested in. I mean, I like Austin Meadows. I think Austin Meadows could be potentially good for them as well too. I really liked him when he was in Tampa Bay against Boston. But yeah, I think Torkelson could definitely have a very good year for them. But I think that they have a lot of room to grow, and there's still a little bit of ways to where they want to be.
Okay, so next topic was the Mets and Brewers. Of course, yesterday they lost 10-0. Today they lose 9-0. They try to avoid the sweep tomorrow. And the main story was Max Scherzer. He got nailed today. Poor performance. And Scherzer, he gave up 8 hits, 5 earned runs. He walked 2. He did strike out 2 in his 5 1/3 inning. But he gave up 3 home runs. And I was wrong about the Brewers so far. I didn't think their lineup was really anything. But I think today showed me, or either Max Scherzer is not who we knew him as. Maybe Verlander starting on the IL has something to do with that. Both pitchers are very good, but they're getting older, and pitchers don't last forever. They break down. Well, everybody does, but especially pitchers. But I'm gonna start with Ben on this one really quick about Max Scherzer. Do you think this is just one bad start for Scherzer, or do you think this will linger on into the season for Max?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously, myself living by Mets land, it's New York market. There's a lot of overreaction. And listening to Sport Radio even this morning on the way to work, talk about the Mets and having a guy calling about how Verlander and Scherzer. Of course, you move on from DeGrom. It's obviously, Scherzer. You had DeGrom and Scherzer last year. Now you have Verlander and Scherzer. And yeah, two guys that, of course, were great together in Detroit. Now they're obviously back together in Queens. Max Scherzer is going to he's a great pitcher. And he's going to be, potentially probably a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. I mean, he's been phenomenal. But I think I'm starting to see some age in terms of his overall pitching. He's obviously has still the stuff, right? I don't think that I'm saying that, like tonight's going to be a lot of this upcoming season, but I think that there's going to be some game blunders. There's going to be some outing blunders that you're like, man, this is not the Max Scherzer that we once do. Remember the game against the Padres last year, going against him in the wild card series when the Padres just absolutely just lit him up. I think of Max Scherzer specifically, he needs to be able to control his stuff and keep the ball down because I was watching that game tonight for sure, and he just was not. The bats were just he was just not missing any bats, and I'm just like, man, this is just not Max Scherzer that I'm once accustomed to. A very good changeup, 95, 96 mile an hour fastball. He was more living in 92, 93, which I think is still very good, very hitter friendly, I would say. And the Brewers were just not missing pitches. I mean, the Brewers did not have one single home run in their first series against the Chicago Cubs, and I think the Mets have a much better pitching staff than the Cubs do. But the Brewers just absolutely annihilated him. I think it's a one-off for him specifically. I think he's going to have some blunders here and there because I think his body's going to be breaking down. But yeah, I mean, the Mets losing 2 games like that to the Brewers, I just did not have that on my bingo card. I think it's just a slow start for them, like I said as well. I wouldn't put the panic button at all for any Met fans out there that are worried yet. Single, of course, looked really good in his first out, and I think that their pitching definitely will start to be better over the course of time. But most surprised about their inconsistency with their hitting because, they have Lindor, they have McNeil, they have Nimmo, they have Marte, they have Canna. They have a lot of guys that can hit. And so far, I know that the Brewers might have a decent pitching staff, but to have back-to-back 0-run type games against the Brewers typically is something the Mets usually don't do a lot of. So, but yeah, Max Scherzer definitely just did not have any type of stuff tonight at all. I think it's, he's not going to have many of those. I think Max is probably going to have between 10 and 13 wins, I'd say, overall. Probably 10 and 6, 10 and 7 maybe, with maybe a mid-2 ERA, I'd say. Or kind of right around there. But yeah, today for sure just simply was not it. Brewers absolutely just attacking the baseball like it was nothing. So very disappointing performance by Max, but also just the Mets pitching as a whole. They weren't doing as great overall. I think losing Edwin Diaz, it's going to put a lot of pressure on that bullpen to really be able to perform in his absence. But my hot take, actually, Isaiah, listen if you want to. They said that Edwin Diaz is going to be out for the season. I think that he's going to be back for the October when they're back and they're going to be going to the playoffs. I think right now he's been in the building. There's reports out that he could potentially be at City for opening day when the Mets are going to be there. So I think specifically he's eager. I don't think that he wants to rush it, but I think that there's potential optimism, at least from I don't know of any source that I'm not listening to anything, but I think potentially, at least for me specifically, I think that we could see him potentially in October or like a late September from the New York Mets. I think that if the Mets could be able to at least be within, high 90 wins They can have a decent offense throughout the season. The Mets will probably still be there at the end. And I think Edwin Diaz, there's a very potential chance that, with him being kind of ahead of schedule and stuff like that, we could for sure potentially see him by season's end, despite him being reported out for the season. So we'll have to see about that specifically. As of right now, he's out for the year. But in terms of Max Scherzer, it was not ideal, and he has to be a lot better than what he showed tonight.
So Isaiah, with all his former A's on the roster, I was really shocked by the last two games. I remember watching the first one, I think on MLB Network, and I just couldn't believe it was like 10-0 right away or whatever it was. By the way, Brooks Raley didn't do well really after Scherzer. Look at this line he had. He pitched an inning, but he gave up 4 hits, 4 earned runs. He did strike out 1, but he gave up 2 home runs to Max's 3. So that was just not an ideal pitching day for the Mets. Same question for you, Isaiah. Do you think this is just one bad game for Scherzer, or is this going to be a prolonging issue with him maybe getting older, not being as good about Max Scherzer? What do you think, Isaiah?
I got to agree with you and Ben. I think it's going to be a prolonging issue. And I think that, we have – I think it goes back to last season. Scherzer didn't really finish the season the way that everybody was accustomed to him dominating, in the end, especially in the playoffs. He got roughed up in that game against the Padres to start the playoffs. And he just wasn't that crisp, especially late in the season. And I think, with him being older, I think has a big factor to deal or to do with the fact that, he hasn't looked that sharp lately. Remember, it's not just this start that he didn't look that good. His first start against the Marlins, I know they won it, but he gave up 3 runs. He gave up 1 home run. He struck out 6, but he walked 2 and gave up 4 hits. So he wasn't really that sharp in that game either. So he hasn't been sharp at all throughout this the first 2 starts of the season. I think age is a big factor, but I also think the pitch clock is a big factor because, and I mentioned this on previous shows that we did, that the reason why I didn't like the pitch clock is because it's going to make a lot of these pitchers be rushed. It's going to make them, be forced to hurry. And, a lot of these pitchers, they have their routine. A lot of them like to get set, take their time and then throw the ball. When you're being rushed to throw the ball, you lose your control. You lose your command. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of runs being scored early, is because a lot of these pitchers, especially with runners on base, feel that pressure. They feel that the pressure, not with the runners on base, but they feel the pressure with the pitch clock. And you have to, you have to throw by a certain amount of time or else you will get punished and you'll get penalized. So I think that also has a reason to do with why Scherzer has been ineffective, is because, Max Scherzer is a guy that's all about routine. Max Scherzer is the guy that likes to take his time. And I think with, the pitch clock being in effect, with him having to rush and him having to rush to throw the ball, he's losing his command. He's losing his control. He's losing the ability to put the ball where he wants to put it, because he's forced to, get away from his routine, get away from his comfort zone, and, being rushed to throw the ball. So I think that his age and also the pitch clock has been an effect on him. And I really think that it's going to be a prolonged issue because, let's face it, the pitch clock's not going away anytime soon. And also his age is not going down anytime soon. So I just think that, for Max Scherzer, he's got to get used to it. I think he's got to get used to the pitch clock, and, he needs to try to get more comfortable with it. But I think that this is probably the pitcher you're going to be seeing for the entire season. I don't think we're going to be seeing the dominant Max Scherzer that we're used to. But I think we're going to see a Scherzer that's still good, but he's not going to be great.
So I remember in spring training, I think John Boy had a video about Max Scherzer trying to manipulate the pitch clock in his favor. So maybe he'll go back to that. And speaking of pitch clock violations, the news around the game segment is here. And Manny Machado today became the first player ejected, arguing after he struck out on a batter/pitch clock violation. Also, players on opening week such as Alexander Bogaerts, Seth Brown were called for pitch clock violations. I'm going to go with you first on this, Isaiah. Now, I did see the Machado situation, and I noticed he wasn't set at 8, but then he came. He was like, it was like 7.5. He was ready, and it was for strike 3. And I'm hoping there's not. You can imagine this postseason play. All of a sudden, there's a called strike 3 on a pitch clock violation that wins the World Series for the other team. I hope it doesn't get to that point. For me, I really want in postseason, I want all the pitch clock stuff gone. I would really want that because I don't want it to be a problem to the point where, hey, we're winning postseason games or losing postseasons on that, depending on who your team is. So Isaiah, first of all, what do you think about the new pitch clock 1 week in? Do you think it's a keeper, or do you think it should be removed moving forward? And in what time span do you think it should be removed, if so?
I think it absolutely should be removed. I don't think it should have been even implemented in the first place. I think this is a really bad idea. I know why they want to do it, because they want to speed up the game. But baseball is not a game for time. Baseball is a game that doesn't have time in it. And I think that you're seeing it right now. You're seeing pitchers and hitters just not getting used to it, and also umpires just being overly sensitive and overly directed towards the rule book when it comes to this. Like a guy being set at 7.5 seconds when he was supposed to be set at 8, you're really gonna punish him even though he's half a second late? Like, come on, man, he's already set. Like, let him play. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Same thing happened with Seth Brown when the A's were playing the Guardians yesterday. There was a runner at third with nobody out. He had 2 strikes on him, and he got called out, and he struck out because of a pitch clock violation because he was standing. He was already set at the plate with 8 seconds to go. But I guess the umpire, took a look at the pitch clock, but when he took a look at it, it was like 7 seconds left. Then he saw Brown set, and then he called him out. It was just something that was very outrageous because he was already set. And I remember opening day, I think Ben knows this as well, that Bogaerts got called out for, or someone got called out, I think Devers it was, that got called out for strike 3. Yeah, because he was set at 8 seconds, and they called him out. I think that it's a bad idea for baseball to have this pitch clock. I know from my time and experience working at the Coliseum and working A's games and working baseball games that a lot of fans, they don't like it because they are saying that, hey, we paid $200 for a game that goes an hour and 50 minutes. Like, what on earth is this? Or, the game is just going by too fast and it's so rushed and it's so sped up that, it's like, why am I even coming to the ballpark anymore? And I also know that, my biggest concern with this, James and Ben, is that when this was implemented, that I thought that, oh my gosh, we're going to see a lot of pitchers, unfortunately, blow out their elbows even more. Because, like I said with Scherzer, when you're a pitcher, you like to have your routine. You like to have your comfort zone of how you get set and how you wind up and, how you get into your delivery. You like to have that time. You like to, take your time to get into your delivery and pitch the ball. When you're being rushed, when you are being told to, hey, you got to speed up, you got to, throw the ball by this amount of time or else, there will be an automatic ball. It speeds it up for you, not just, physically, but mentally, and you start to be rushed and you lose your control. You have to, throw the ball, faster, because, you don't want to get penalized. You're not you're not in your comfort zone. And, we've seen a lot of pitchers already blowing out their elbows before this. Imagine now when they're rushed. Imagine when they're sped up, how it's going to be. I think you're going to unfortunately see a lot more Tommy Johns happening in baseball. I think that, we're going to see, I don't think we're going to see a lot of good starting pitching this year just because, and we already seen it so far that, you're not really seeing a lot of great starting pitching because a lot of guys are being rushed. A lot of guys, are being, they're scared that, they're going to get penalized because of the pitch clock violation and all of that stuff. That, they're just losing their control. They're rushing. And then, when they're rushing, they hang a slider or they hang a curveball, and that's a home run right there. So I just don't think it's good for the sport. I think that you're going to see a lot more injuries. I think that, you're going to see a lot of wild pitching and ineffective pitching. And I also think, to your point, James, you're going to see, my worst nightmare is to see a World Series being won or lost upon a guy, striking out on a pitch clock violation, or a pitcher, let's say with the bases loaded, 2 outs in the ninth, tied ball game in the World Series, a pitcher getting a pitch clock violation and it's ball 4, and the other team wins the World Series because of that. Like, who wants to win the World Series because of a pitch clock violation? And that would be absolutely horrendous for the game of baseball. I think that, and here's a hot take, I think the pitch clock will be gone after this year. I think that there's going to be several complaints around baseball. I think the hitters are not going to like it. I think the pitchers are not going to like it. And I think we're going to see in a big time game that there's going to be a game being decided because of a pitch clock violation. And I think that there's going to be so much controversy, and MLB is going to be forced to get rid of it. I don't think it's going to be here to stay.
By the way, Isaiah, you mentioned A's fans are paying $200 for tickets. I could think of other things to do with $200 than go to an A's game. I'll just say that.
That's
Ben,
your first mistake.
Yeah. Unless Shohei's pitching, I guess. But
Yeah.
what do you think about the new pitch clock in its first weekend? And do you think it should be a keeper, or do you think it should be removed, Ben?
So I'm going to be playing devil's advocate for this one. I like it in a sense where I think that for an audience, for people that kind of like baseball here and there, or kind of like it as a secondary sport, I think you're starting to see more people starting to come back to it because the game's going faster. And I think that's for an audience of like, oh, baseball fans, we can just sit back and we can relax, and 3-hour baseball game, we can just, now people can be like, okay, I could go watch this game and, get a beer or something like that and be home at a reasonable time. I don't have to worry about, 7 o'clock game. I could be home between 9:30 and 10 o'clock and not have to worry about getting home at, midnight now. So I think that we have that specific thing where the pitch clock is there, and I know that it's kind of more timed up and stuff like that, but I think specifically, you're out there to play a game. If you want to hang out and talk and have a beer or something like that, that's when you have the pregame. That's when you have the postgame show. So, you have that specific abilities. I think what they should do for the playoffs is they should have an owners and players vote together before the playoffs happen. And basically, I would do the overall rule throughout the regular season, see how they overall viewed it, and then potentially see if they feel like they want to do it for the playoffs, vote it right there. Just don't have it where you're just going to automatically go into it and have the overall rule right as the playoffs, because you'd probably have a lot more mixed feelings about it. It's almost like in NFL, do you want to keep that QB sneak rule? Do you want to keep that pass interference rule? This rule is a big rule right now for the postseason, because I agree with you, Isaiah. Nobody wants to win a World Series on a pitch clock. You looked at the Eagles and Chiefs. Nobody wanted to see the ending with a pass interference on Bradbury for the Eagles turned out where they had no chance to get the ball back after they kicked the field goal. It's very just – you just want to make it on fair terms, right? You want to have the championship won on fair terms. So I like it, I think, for the regular season because there's just so many games. I feel like the players will just start to feel like they're in a rhythm over time, and I don't think that I'm going to be worried about it as much as potentially some other people, but I could definitely see the frustration. But when it comes to more of the playoffs and when the games are starting to get more intense down the wire. That's why I think that there'd be more criticism. I think that there should be a player owner vote, kind of similar to what like the lockout was, where a lot of the players and stuff like that, they talk and stuff to the union, and then maybe go from there and see how they feel about the overall rule.
So rapid fire questions on the last two here. With the Phillies home opener looming, they have one more game tomorrow afternoon at the Yankees. Is Rob Thompson on the hot seat with the 1-4 start? Quickly, Ben, what do you think here about Rob
No,
Thompson?
I don't think he will. I think specifically, I think it's a slow start for the Phillies. I think that it's a very after just to come in, and bring them to World Series and then have one bad year and you just want me to say, okay, that's it. I think potentially they have a bad year, then another bad year. I would start to have some consideration because that's a very damn good baseball team with a lot of good pitching, a lot of good hitting. It just be an underperforming type year. It's a really tough division. But I would definitely start having conversations potentially next season if it got worse.
Isaiah, same question. Is Rob Thompson on the hot seat after their 1-4 start with Philadelphia? I think I know the answer.
I'm going to surprise you. Not right now, but if this continues, and let's say, at Memorial Day or June 1st, the Phillies are sitting there having played like 40 games. Let's say the Phillies are, I don't know, like 15-25. Then I think he is because, like Ben said, this is a damn good baseball team. You have a great lineup, great pitching staff, bullpen. You make great additions to the bullpen. They expect to be in the playoffs. And if you have, like, let's say you're 10 games under 500 going into June and, there's really not a lot of hope, then I think it is because, like I said earlier, Dombrowski, I don't think is sold on Rob Thompson. His comment about this being a year in, year out evaluation, a yearly evaluation, that really stuck out to me. And they only signed him to a 3-year contract, so they can easily get out of it and not really go get a championship level manager. So I think he's not on the hot seat right now. But if this continues, and let's say June 1st, the Phillies are 10 games under 500, then yeah, of course, he absolutely will be on the hot seat.
Okay, Ben, you said you had a perfect idea, and I'm sorry I didn't see that, but what was it?
Oh, there was the overall having the rule coming together with the meeting before the playoffs to decide if they want to have that rule brought in. I think that just overall, it would be fair to have the players kind of view and see how the rule is during the regular season because it's kind of a first thing. Because I think that the playoffs, the games more at stake. And I feel like players, there would be a lot more scrutiny and fans would be a lot more uptight if it started to become more, in a lot of those games. I think during regular season games, I think that there, of course, is a little bit of, well, we can get them tomorrow. Well, if it's in Game 6 or Game 7, you have to go into the National League Championship Series. There's no game tomorrow, so it's do or die. So I think that they really have to kind of take a look at that rule and start to evaluate after this regular season and see if it's working and if it's worth it for the playoffs.
I like that. Ben, there's so many ideas and thoughts you've had tonight. It's like, yeah, that makes total sense. It's a rarity from what I hear from other people. Let me just say that. On the flip side, Isaiah's Phillies are 1-4, but the Rays are 5-0 to the start of this new season. I'm gonna ask you first, Isaiah, and I hate this question, but are the Rays after 5 games a true contender, or are they a pretender?
Well, you know how Ben mentioned that, the first week it's just all about overreactions. Well, this question is, it's an overreaction question. That's what it is. For the Rays, they're 5-0, but I don't buy into the Rays. I think the Rays, I like their lineup. You guys mentioned earlier with Franco, Azarena being there, Diaz being there as well. They're going to have a great lineup, and they're going to score a lot of runs. But my biggest concern with the Rays is their starting pitching. They have a lot of guys there that, have had a lot of injuries and are injury prone. Yeah, right now they're not injured just yet because we just started the season, but can they last throughout the entire season? And you can also count on the Rays every single year to choke when it matters the most because they always do something stupid and lean on the analytics and do some type of bullpen game in the playoffs and do something like that where they try to outthink everybody and they end up losing because they end up trying to outthink everybody instead of just playing the game. So I think right now, yeah, they're 5-0, but I think right now they're pretenders just because I don't trust them not to get injured, especially their starting pitchers, not to get injured like midway through the season. And I have questions if they can last throughout the entire season because let's face it, fellas, in the playoffs, even if you have a great lineup, it's going to come down to pitching. It's going to come down to starting pitching and the bullpen. And if your starting pitchers are all wiped out due to injuries, you're not going to be able to win. And especially in that division in the AL East where you have great lineups throughout the entire division, you're going to need to have great pitching to be able to beat those lineups.
And I was, to your point, Isaiah, I was looking at their bullpen and their rotation. I'm like, I know a couple of those guys, but the rest of them, okay. Ben, do you think they're pretenders or do you think they are contenders after their hot 5-0 start, the Tampa Bay Rays?
I would say they're probably like in the middle. I don't think that they're pretenders, but I don't think that they might be at the top of the class. I do think that pitching, you need to have elite pitching to carry you. And the Rays every year feel like they have a pitching lab that, they have coaches that can just turn a lot of these guys into Cy Young Award winners. So I would not put it past them no matter who they put out there. If they could get Glasnow back during like the midpoint of the season, I think that's a big help for sure. I also wouldn't be surprised if they potentially got some help at the trade deadline for another pitcher. Isaiah, I know you might be salty about this one, but what about Paul Blackburn if he was healthy and you put him in the Tampa Bay rotation? You could make a little trade. Oakland can get some Tampa prospects, which I don't think would be terrible for them. But you have him with potentially like Zach Eflin and Glasnow and McClanahan. Now you're starting to cook a little bit. I think that the Rays lineup, I don't think it's sustainable to go deep enough in the postseason. But I think they're contenders. I think that you look at the AL East specifically, and I have them right now in my top three for sure. I would say outside the Yankees and the Blue Jays.
So, I'll get to final thoughts here. I'll start with Ben. You have any final thoughts on tonight's show?
Well, first of all, James, it was great to have you back on here. I know it's been a while, and I like your Angels stuff in the back. Isaiah, I don't know if I told you, but I'm actually going to go see James's Angels at Fenway Park in person on Marathon Weekend, which is a very special weekend in Boston where I was able to go to last year, I believe, when they played Minnesota. It was actually opening weekend because of the lockout, so that was very cool to see. But to go see Shohei in person and Mike Trout, that'll be something that I'm really excited to see because last year I tried to see that and, well, it got canceled because of the rain in New York. So this year, hopefully I'll get to see that. So, James, I will let you know how that goes. I'm just very happy that baseball's back. I really missed it. Opening day was really great. I know that people are like, well, March is very early for baseball. I don't think after the World Baseball Classic, I'm like, give me baseball, all the baseball for sure. Now with March Madness being over too, I can kind of start to focus more on baseball as well. I know that the Masters, you have the basketball playoffs. It's kind of just the best time of year to really be as a sports fan for sure. So hopefully the Red Sox could actually make me happy here and there for once. But I'll love them till the rest of the season, and hopefully that the pitching could be a little they could be okay. They could at least give me a baseball season.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words, Ben. Isaiah, your final thoughts.
My final thoughts is it was a great show, James. It's great to have you back on the program, man. We haven't had you on a program in like so long, so it was so good to have you back. And you did a great job hosting the program in place of Laurel, so great job on that. I would say my final thoughts is two things. Number one, like Ben mentioned, it's definitely one of the best times to be a sports fan. You got the Masters, you got baseball. You have the final week of the NBA playoffs. I mean, that Lakers-Clippers game tomorrow between my Lakers, James, and your Clippers, it's going to be the biggest game in the history of our rivalry because there's so much at stake. Basically, the winner goes to the gets a spot in the playoffs as the 5th seed, I believe, or the 6th seed, and the loser gets the play-in tournament. So there's like nothing bigger than that. So that's gonna be great. I know. I hope that I'm gonna be okay emotionally because I know tonight was very it was such a roller coaster. I mean, I was like raging at LeBron at the end of that game as James pulls out his Clipper stuff. But it's gonna be fun tomorrow, and I can't wait for that. Can't wait for the playoffs. Can't wait to see how everything unfolds in the final week of the season. See if Dallas even makes it to the play-in tournament. And also you have what else? The NFL draft too in late April, so that's gonna be something fun as well. I know we're gonna do a live draft show later in this month, but great show. Hopefully my A's are able to actually settle down pitching wise and not score 11 plus runs and lose the game again because that was very painful to watch. But it's gonna be a great season, gonna be a great time to be a sports fan, and I just hope for this because I know James is probably going to give me a lot of crap tomorrow if the Lakers lose. I need the Lakers to win tomorrow. I know the Clippers have won 13 straight or whatever it is, something crazy. The Lakers gotta snap that streak tomorrow. You have to snap that streak. And also, the last thing I'll say before I turn it back over to Ben and James is looking forward to being on Kicking It with Cruz sometime this week.
It's gonna be this month. This week we're gonna recap the Final Four.
Nice.
We're gonna recap, of course, my UConn Huskies being the champions of March Madness, and then of course we'll kind of start to go more into baseball. I might put some little bit of the football stuff. The Mac Jones tension with Bill Belichick. There was reports out today about that. That was some big nugget that I did not want to see happen. I don't think that there's more to that. I think that there's just some clickbait out of it the more I see it. But I guess when they say when there's smoke, there's fire, anything can really happen. So we'll talk about a lot of that stuff towards the end of the week. Looking forward to that.
Yeah,
there's also Trey Lance trade rumors too. So
fire them up. I loved it.
I this time of year I always like with the NFL too, with all the moves and everything. But yeah, it's been a while since I've been on these internet waves on MI6 or MI6, whatever the case is. It felt good to be back with you guys and to host too. That was pretty cool. You can find me on Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. Tomorrow, I believe, we'll have Sports Minute, and then we'll have more programming on that network. And hopefully I can get on Kicking It sometime. I watched last week's episode, and that was awesome because you covered everything. And a lot of shows don't do that. So I really enjoyed that. While I was at work too, with hours to kill, that got me through the day. So I really enjoy that. And then also you can find me at Halos in the Infield, Instagram at James Session 89. On there, I do the pregame shows, and there's other podcasts on there. But guys, thank you for having me on. It was great. I'll let Isaiah or whomever get us out of here. Thank you, guys.
All right, guys. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you guys back on here for another edition of Batter Up next week, Monday. So it's going to be a great show. But until next time, stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy, and we'll see you guys next Monday.
I speak it every day. I'm trying to get it poppin', each and every way. It's one nation, under goons. My goons are stripping all these cats down in the under rooms.